Okay, so welcome everyone to the first BioWednesday webinar of 2021. Seems like 2020 went past with lots of noise, but almost in a complete blizzard of things that went really quickly. And now we have to stock take and see what we do next. But of course, lots of things haven't gone back to normal, possibly never will, or whatever normal will be. But I'm delighted we have such an illustrious panel from both sides of the Atlantic today to talk about what they expect and how to make the most from a virtual JP Morgan week, which has been the staple of so much of the start of the life science years for ever since I can remember, which with my memory probably isn't that long, to be fair. But just a couple of bits of housekeeping before I hand over to Mel. If anyone not on the panel could keep themselves muted throughout, that will reduce the background noise that may come up. That would be much appreciated. And the session will be recorded, and you will be able to access a recording of this post-event. And the chat box function, the panel will go through some questions they've discussed in advance, or been posed to in advance, and a chance to discuss them. But if you want to put questions or just comments into the chat box, if there's time at the end, we will then come back to some of those and try and work them in. But I think that's all from me. A happy new year to you. And I shall hand over to Melanie Toynsool, Managing Partner of Instinctive Partners.
Lovely. Thank you, Tony. Thanks for the welcome, and welcome to everybody to what should be a very interesting discussion. Good to be here. Thank you for making me chair, and let me run you through our panel for this afternoon. Or this morning, depending on where you are. So firstly, we have Mike Ward, who is Global Head of Thought Leadership at Decision Resources Group. Although most of you know Mike from his many years as a journalist on various publications such as BioCentury and Scrip. So he is the industry commentator extraordinaire that I'm sure will have a few things to say. We have Jen Landress, who is Senior VP and COO at Biocom, the largest, most experienced leader and advocate for California's life sciences sector, which works on behalf of over 1,100 members. We have Tina Gunnick, Managing Director at International Conference Group EBD. So she has a lot of experience of conferences and certainly has been entering a new world of the virtual conference. So her skills of logistical execution are probably being pressed at the moment. We have Tim Breers, who is going to provide us with this biotech view. He's the CEO of Evenetics, which is a Cambridge, UK-based company developing radically different approach to gene synthesis. It has a desktop DNA synthesis platform. Also, Alan Marchington, who will be leading on our discussion today. He's the managing partner at Bridge Valley Ventures, which is a life sciences focused venture capital fund based in the UK and it invests on a global basis. And we have, last but not least, of course, Teresa Lavoie, who's a principal from the law firm Fish and Richardson. They focus on patent and IP, and she is personally been involved in the sale of patent portfolios worth more than $33 billion in deal value. So has a lot to say there. So with the introductions done very quickly, let's crack on with the discussion. If I can ask the panel members the first time of speaking just to say whether they're going to be attending virtually the JPM conference or they've decided not to, that would be great. So let's start with Alan. What do you think is going to be missed most if you don't go, or if you do go but it's on a virtual basis?
Yeah, okay. So thanks, Melanie, and thanks for the invitation to join the panel. So I am going to JP Morgan virtually in all its forms. And I've been to JP Morgan since 1997, showing my age. I was only 3 at the time. Yeah, so it's sort of a bit odd that this week in January is going to be, I'm sat at home in my dining room, as it were. I think the thing that's going to be missed the most about it for me is really that serendipity, that ability to bump into Andy Richards in the lounge, or when you're getting on the plane or wherever, and meeting people as you walk down the street. you know, for me, JP Morgan's a bit like sending Christmas cards. You know, you send Christmas cards to give people a bit of an update that you're still alive, things are still going well, and what's happened during the year and what you're planning for the next year. And that's sort of what JP Morgan's about, really. It's about sending your Christmas cards to this small community of the biotech community and let them know what you're up to and what you got planned, and then see if there's any opportunities. And generally, I come away from JP Morgan with a few really good deals and some deals that I just didn't expect. So I think those are the things that we'll really miss about the whole thing. And of course, the parties and all that sort of stuff, I wouldn't want to comment on, but exactly that's going to be, my liver's going to be thankful.
There's nothing to say that you can't do the meetings with a cocktail at hand. Anything more, Alan, before I move on?
No, the other thing I think the things that I won't miss are the price of the hotels and the restaurants. And I think one of the things that's going to be maybe difficult if you're not attending the main JP Morgan meeting, and as we all know, invites are few and far between. Although I think there are a few more around this year with it all being virtual. Then getting access to the pharma companies through, you know, some of the partnering sessions and some of the conferences that are happen, they don't seem to register. So unless you've got a great contact or something, it may be harder for the pharma companies just to get access. That's what we're hearing from a couple of portfolio companies that we're getting connections with. So that may be a bit more difficult for people this year, I think.
Brilliant. Yeah. Thank you, Alan. So, Teresa, anything to add to that?
Sure. Thank you again for inviting me to this as well. And I want to echo what Alan said. I had jotted down a few notes, and serendipity was the exact word that I had used as well. So, you know, that meeting on the street or in a lobby somewhere as you're charging your cell phone or trying to get a cup of coffee is really, I think, something that a lot of people will miss because, as Alan noted, it is still a small community. You know, there's thousands of people there, but it still is a fairly small community, and highly likely you'll run into an old friend that you worked with in the past or someone that you've done a deal with in the past. So I think a lot of people miss that, particularly this year after, you know, everything being virtual for, you know, 10 months or so now, and likely a number of months to go still. Hopefully that will be limited. Another thing I think, you know, is that the energy just and the pride about the industry that is sort of in the air there, that it's vibrant, and you can feel that energy of this growing industry that's doing great things for patients, right? And that you're part of that and connected with that. I think people really miss that, and it's hard to recreate that in a virtual format. So, you know, we've all tried with various formats and various organizations to try to create that energy on these online and virtual forums, but it's hard to feel that sense of pride and energy in a virtual format. And then I think, you know, just sort of going back to our roots, the science and the medicines, right? Just sort of learning about that, seeing what others are doing, feeling the pulse of sort of where the industry is now and where it's going. Interesting areas that, you know, back to our scientific or MD roots or just deal making roots about where the industry is going, and sort of getting a sense for that, and an understanding of, you know, the great things that are occurring. So totally echo what Alan says about the serendipity, but also sort of that pride and energy that comes from being there live and seeing, you know, all of your friends and colleagues.
Yeah, it's sort of the mood music, isn't it? It sets the tone for the year almost. You know, you come back from JP Morgan and people haven't been, say, how was it? What was the mood? How did people feel about it? And that, can we pick that up virtually? I'm not sure in this whole thing. So, you know, Teresa, I think spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've had sort of six to 9 months of virtual conferences already. I mean, in the, you know, based on that experience, are you sort of, I'm sorry, I'm going off script here, sorry, but have you adapted how you've?
Yeah, so I think the great thing about it for us and is that, you know, JP Morgan isn't 1 week now, it can be a month. So we're having meetings that we're setting up at the end of January, and it's spread out a little bit more, so it isn't as frantic. You're not hungover, and you can actually you can actually have, rather than a half-hour crazy meeting, you can actually have an hour's meeting, a proper meeting with somebody that you haven't met before. So that is fabulous. The other part of it is, I think, the virtual nature is you can see more presentations, so you can get more science, which is great. So I think that is really good for us. It's that networking piece that I sort of gonna miss a lot. that we haven't had for the last 6 to 9 months. You know, you haven't heard the gossip on the street sort of thing, other than random Zoom calls and drinks with a few people just to find out what's going on. You know, virtual drinks.
It's not
Yeah,
quite
exactly.
the same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not quite the same, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, Teresa, do you want to add anything more to Alan's comment?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all had to learn, and I think I've done well in terms of moving forward to more of this virtual connections, and that not every meeting has to be live, right? You don't have to get on a plane every week and travel around the world, right? So I think that's a good thing for all of us. We can develop new relationships and further existing relationships by people, will say, yeah, let's get on a call, let's do this. And so rather than having to meet, so that's great. But I do think, as Alan said, some of the serendipity networking, right? Or finding out things that you just wouldn't find out on a sort of agenda Zoom call, right? Where there's not necessarily that much flexibility because people want to get off Zooms, right?
Yeah.
Being on them all day long, right? So there's not as much time for that sort of, oh, by the way, conversations, right? Where it naturally occurs when you're meeting people, going out to dinner, going out to drinks or coffee, right? So I think that is definitely missed. But I think people have, pulled sort of 5 years forward into today, forced to do so in terms of how we can communicate without actually getting on a plane and meeting face to face.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely.
Well, let's ask go to someone who actually organises and is responsible for organising these sorts of events, and so can give us it from a sort of conference perspective. So starting with Tina, do you think the sort of formal partnering facility via something like Biotech Showcase can replace the informal kind of bumping into someone on a street dynamic that JPM is known for?
Well, I think listening to Teresa and Alan talk about that, I think we've heard that a lot from delegates. That kind of magic of bumping into someone at the airport lounge or on the street is very difficult to replicate in this environment. However, we have seen kind of people adapt to that. We adjusted very quickly for our BioWednesday spring meeting in Paris. And then have been learning since then. So we've reached the point now where I think we're all a bit more comfortable on Zoom, and we've seen that reflected in the formal partnering numbers as well. So we have around 33,000 requests. We are expected to hit around 5,000 scheduled meetings. So that side I think is picking up and ticking on, and people are used to that. But we've also tried to address some of this kind of informal, more fun networking with the meeting this year. And so we're doing a few different things, like a virtual bike ride on Peloton in support of Global Genes, an organization we work with quite a lot. So you can get a sweat on and meet some new people that you might not have. We also have one of our sponsors, Syneos Health, who's running a blackjack masterclass with an MIT card counter and blackjack champion, which is kind of fun. So you can pick up some skills and take a break from your normal meetings there and learn a little bit about card counting if you choose. And a business caricaturist will be joining a few of our networking opportunities in the breaks between plenaries and lunch, cognizant of the fact that people are often doing their day job right alongside their conference attendance this year. So we're trying to schedule things into convenient times with that in mind. We're also taking advantage of a platform called Remo, which some of you might have seen, which is, in my view, kind of the closest that you're going to get to a cocktail reception or a networking hour, in that it's set up like an exhibit hall with several tables, and you actually hop around as like a little avatar to those tables. So you can join kind of a 5-person informal chat and then jump over to another table and join a 5-person informal chat. So that's pretty fun, and kind of introduces that element of meeting new people that you don't already have a scheduled meeting with. So we've seen that be really popular, and we're going to be rolling out a couple of those sessions this year. So overall, I think a lot of opportunities to bump into people. It's not the same as the business lounge, as we were joking about just before joining this, but I think there really are a lot of opportunities this year. And then to the educational element, or kind of the tapping into the insight from the year that Teresa was mentioning, we do have over 50 program elements, more than 200 speakers, and we have 361 curated company presentations. So there is a lot of content there available on a variety of topics. Really interesting chats kicked off yesterday with Monsef Salawi. We'll have Kate Bingham, Michelle McMurray-Keith, Keith Bates, just a variety of KOLs. Richard Hatchett, I think, is speaking this morning, along with Amy Finan from Sabine. So there's really a chance to tap into knowledge from a variety of topics. So we're excited, and it won't be the same as being in San Francisco, but I think there really is a lot to gain from engaging this week.
That's fantastic. It sounds great. So if you can actually get some of those elements into other conferences, I think that would be great too. So Tim, as CEO of a biotech company that would normally be using Biotech Showcase to partner, how are you looking at it?
I mean, I think a lot of what Tina describes is very interesting, and you know, I think under the circumstances of this year, it sounds like a lot's been done, and these are all interesting approaches. So there's definitely a place for this sort of online partnering. In our case, we normally go to JPM, actually, and I hesitate to say this, but not sign up for anything. Just take the opportunity to meet informally on the street, and meetings we've set up on a one-to-one basis independently. So, but certainly, you know, in the virtual world, there is definitely you know, an opportunity to do more of this stuff online along the lines that Tina's describing. For us, it's really about going there, and it's about that serendipity to take networking opportunities. I'm not at all surprised that Alan says he goes to San Francisco to meet with Andy Richards. I think you know,
Doesn't everyone?
we go there and meet with our neighbours as well. So it makes you wonder why you don't just go there in any case. You know, when you, but certainly, yeah, absolutely, it is that great accumulation of people in one place. Now, it's getting a lot bigger, of course, has got a lot bigger over the last couple of years, and I think it's possibly becoming, in some respects, increasingly difficult to find just the people you want. But certainly, you know, we would hope to go next year. We'd hope to go independently, not sign up for anything, and still meet the people we want to see. But yeah, a lot of what Tina says is very interesting. Probably the way a lot of these conferences are going to go. Actually, I attended one back in October that used that same sort of system of you know, having an avatar and moving around and speaking to people who are in your area, and it worked pretty well, actually. So yeah, I think definitely a place for it.
Oh well, that's fantastic. So maybe we'll come to how this is going to reset things for 22, but maybe this is the way forward. I mean, but Tim, do you think it is? You kind of, if you're going to go to JPM, you need some kind of formal partnering system.
Well, I think that's a good question. We haven't used one in the past, but it's a lot of work to set up the stuff on your own. So I think, yes, a formal partnering system would certainly be helpful. Yeah. And if you're there, of course, you get the advantage of the serendipity as well. So you get the best of both worlds. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on to look at how the West Coast sector in the States is going to adapt to the change, because obviously the World and his wife comes over to San Francisco, and you know, it kind of creates this charge. How you're going to sort of maintain that global engagement that it offers to you and your members. So this question to Jen.
Hi, thank you for including me today, and I will be participating virtually in the conference. You know, I think the one thing that we have all learned through 2020 is that you can engage and participate more broadly in events, and certainly you kind of, you know, the world becomes flat, just that ability to connect with people that you might not normally connect with on a regular basis. And, you know, in some respects, Zoom neutralizes everyone. You know, you're all kind of on the same ground. You can sort of learn more about people with their backgrounds. Obviously, there's always the pop-in kids or the barking dogs or cats walking across keyboards. You know, we've all seen it. And I think it helps establish like a more unique connection with someone that you might not get as you're sort of bumping into each other in the lobby at the Hilton. And I think with, if you're doing one-on-one meetings, I mean, I'm sure we've all done this, have been guilty of it and have been on the receiving end of it. You're having a conversation with someone, but out of the other side of their eye, they're waiting for the next person to walk by. So, you know, I think there's some value to having those more meaningful connections and conversations via Zoom during the conference. And I think there's, you know, just from the West Coast perspective and from our members, there are certainly a lot of opportunities and ways to engage and ways to kind of put yourself out there. And I think it's how much you're willing to put into how much effort you're willing to put into the week. You know, I can share a link. I'm sure you've all seen like the Big Four bio. They have the whole list of events and things that are taking place. Some of the things that Tina was talking about. You know, there's a lot of opportunity to really just put yourself out there. And I've found participating in virtual conferences, you know, commenting and putting things out there in the chat. And sometimes that invites that sort of one-off opportunity where it's not quite as serendipitous as what Alan and Teresa were talking about, but it's definitely that opportunity to connect with someone that you might not normally have connected with and have a little bit more of a conversation, or even schedule something offline. So I think there's, you know, a lot of opportunity, and certainly from Biocom California's perspective for our members, you know, we're open to helping facilitate introductions. And for anyone on this call, if there's companies that you want to potentially try and get connected to, please let us know. We're happy to help make those introductions and facilitate more of those one-on-ones. I think the fact that JP Morgan is essentially a month-long event now, it allows you to expand your calendar a little bit and not have that frenetic pace. You know, certainly our step counts will go down. So if you want to run around the block in between meetings, you know, just to show up breathless on your next Zoom, you know, it could be a conversation starter. But I think
it's a lot of Peloton.
Yes, exactly. You can jump on their Peloton. But, you know, I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's just how much you're willing to kind of put into it and put yourself out there. And just a quick shameless plug, one of the events that Biocom California is doing and on Thursday is really highlighting everything that's happening in Los Angeles. So if anyone's interested in learning more about that, I can either drop it in chat or send the link to Tony after the fact. I think the time zone challenges will be interesting. So in some respects, you'll still get a little sleep deprivation, and you know, which is not necessarily a bad thing for that 1 week. And yeah, I think those are some of the key things that we're looking at in terms of how we're supporting our members and encouraging people to get involved. One comment I wanted to add on Tim's, what you were talking about, Tim. I was doing some researching yesterday, and I've seen that some of the pharmas are putting out specific links and pages to connect with their organization. So for example, Genentech has a specific partnering page scheduled or set up where you can request meetings with some of their scouts and reps. So I can also share that with Tony.
That certainly sounds very interesting. Is that just for JPM week or JPM month? Or generally just?
It's set up as like JPM 2021, so I don't know how long it's going to be open, but it's certainly an opportunity that I thought was a creative way for pharmas to sort of highlight, hey, we're here and we want to meet with you.
Well, yeah, certainly for those companies that aren't using a sort of EBD type partnering system, you know, that's a great alternative. Thank you. That's fantastic, Jen. Thank you. Alan, do you want to?
Yeah.
Help?
Yeah, no, sure. So Jen, I think that's really helpful. And I think one of the key points is, like every JP Morgan, the more effort you put in, probably in October and November, the more you get out the week that you're there, rather than trying to do it on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, sending invitations to people, which generally most calendars are booked. This year it's a little different because you can, as I say, the calendar's extended, so you can get away with doing some of those things. So I think, yeah, like you say, better organization, you can do more and you're going to get more out of it. I completely agree with that. I think the link with the West Coast is quite important. You know, when we look, some of the investments I've made have been on the West Coast and been fabulously successful. And one of those I picked up at JP Morgan. Didn't know the company that well. It turned out I had some connections in the company ultimately, but it was one of those serendipitous things. So, you know, I'll certainly be one of those people who are happy to stay up late to actually do some of those calls with the West Coast companies that we're speaking with to get there. I think the challenge for the West Coast is that time zone lag, and just are people prepared to move outside the normal boundaries of the VCs on the West Coast and the companies on the West Coast to reach out further, particularly to the UK, to where the time zone's not quite so friendly, really. But I hope so. You know, I think that'll be. I think that'd be good.
Well, I suppose if JPM is becoming a month-long conference, there's a little bit more wriggle room rather than trying to fit all your meetings in over 3 days.
Yeah, I think that's a major advantage of this, actually. And I hope when it becomes, all in person, whether we can still do that. And I'm sure we can, because, we've done it once, so we can do it again. So yeah, I think that's great. And I wasn't aware of the farmer links actually on the website. So that's really helpful as well, Jen. I'll certainly follow that and pass that on to some of our portfolios. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
All right, so let's move to how the new setup is going to affect news flow. Mike, you were saying that a lot of the news stories that you were thinking of for the rest of the year, pretty much you could pick up at JPM. Do you want to just see, how is it going to impact, do you think, the journalists looking for a good story or sector news flow generally?
Yes, thanks, Mel. Yeah, I will be attending JPM virtually. In fact, I'm at the Fierce Biotech in their sort of satellite meeting. I'm doing a sort of a conversation there, so I'll be there. It's interesting. The JPM, lots and lots of companies actually save their news for JPM week, so that's when all of a sudden people will be putting out sort of news events around sort of product developments, or everybody's always looking for what are the big acquisitions that are going to be announced. And in fact, if there aren't any sort of multi-billion-dollar transactions, people kind of sort of think, oh well, it's sort of fairly disappointing week. So it's always there's always lots and lots of news. I mean, when I was at Script, we would have 5 people attending in San Francisco, and we're not going to miss the cost. We're not going to miss the time it takes to get there, the jet lag, and also I guess the strain on our mental health as we're sort of running around. I think that it's not going to have too much of an impact because, firstly, people will still be in that groove of making announcements next week, because the world will be still focused on the life sciences industry in the second week of January. It's almost like now part of the calendar. Biotech companies are still keen to talk to the media, so I've already been having conversations with companies in the run-up. So we're going to have content that actually will go out during the JPM week, but we've actually recorded it. It's in the good old Blue Peter fashion. It's something that we prepared earlier. So that is something that's still going to happen. I think there's also, and Alan kind of mentioned this, is that scheduling is actually going to be a lot easier, because you're not having to run from one part of San Francisco to another to actually get to those meetings. You can spend a little bit more time, and it's over a greater period of time, so therefore you've got more opportunity. You've also got more opportunity to see the presentations, because when you're there, quite a lot of the times there would be 2 or 3 presentations all running in parallel, and they were the ones that you wanted to see. Now, because it's all going to be recorded, etc., there will be that opportunity to see those. So that's really useful. The downside, though, and it comes back to that sort of serendipity, is bumping into people in the street that you hadn't seen for a while, and you sort of say, oh, hi, what are you up to now? Actually, they may be doing something that is off the radar, and you go and have a coffee, they explain to you what they're up to, and sort of saying, right, okay, in 2 or 3 months' time, I've got something to definitely say about this. Hand them the card and sort of say, give it to us exclusively. And that was something that we were able to do. The other thing actually also, which was kind of like a fun game for me, was looking in those lobby areas and actually seeing who was talking to whom and or who was stepping out with somebody and sort of thinking, oh, I wonder why they're doing that. That looks interesting. So it was just sort of, you know, it kind of gave you ammunition for the rest of the year. What we're going to miss then is, you know, that opportunity to sort of get that early sort of visibility on, you know, things that might be happening.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Mike. And given I'm working in a comms agency at the moment, I can attest to the fact that we're putting out quite a lot of press releases, not only next week but this week. So, I mean, Mike, is there anything already on your expectations of news next week? Are you prepared to say?
Well, obviously, I wouldn't be prepared to say because, you know, other people would get it. But there's going to be, you know, clearly, you know, a lot of conversations. It'll be, I think, one of the conversations is actually going to take place is, you know, for example, today, you know, Georgia is electing, you know, 2 senators. And the last I heard, it looked like they were going to be Democrats, which basically means that there's going to be a sort of a full house for the Democrats. And I think that is going to, in some way, switch some of the conversation, because when the House was, you know, Congress was split between the sort of the Republicans and the Democrats, it was sort of felt that, well, you know, nothing too drastic might happen. And I think that people might have to sort of reset their expectations for, you know, what is going to happen to the healthcare sector in the States if the results pan out. So that's one of the things that, you know, I think people will be talking about. I think the other thing will be the sort of the rise of telehealth. And I think that what we're going to see is we're going to see a lot more interest in sort of telemedicine and telehealth and sort of, you know, the virtual, not only virtual, you know, involvement between patients and doctors, but also the sort of remote monitoring of clinical trials and discussions about what needs to happen on a sort of almost like a legislative front to actually, you know, make that happen more.
No, well, that is fantastic. Thanks, Mike. Very interesting. I mean, Jen, given that you're, you know, a US national and, you know, probably following the election fairly closely as well. I mean, you know, firstly, how do you think the virtual impact is going to have on the news from, you know, some of your members and the energy that they provide, but also are there particular news items, themes that you think are going to impact next week?
You know, I agree with a lot of what Mike just said. I mean, certainly I think companies will be putting their news out, they're saving things up, they'll be making their announcements like we've seen in previous years. And certainly at the actual JP Morgan conference, you know, there's always a lot of information that comes out in terms of company announcements. You know, in terms of the political news, I typically don't comment much on that, but you never know where people sit with it. But certainly we've all been monitoring the election in Georgia today. And last I saw, one seat had flipped and the other was too close to call. So, you know, we'll see what happens with that. And then certainly the session later in terms of certifying the Electoral College votes. But I think just, I guess going back to kind of the JP Morgan and trends and things like that. I mean, I think it's kind of going back to what Alan was talking about a little in the beginning as well, that opportunity to just connect with people that you might not normally connect with, or that you sort of do those bump-ins. You know, one of the things that I'm trying to do is proactively schedule happy hours or coffee dates with people that I normally connect with. You know, it's not quite a lunch meeting at some overpriced restaurant, but it's still an opportunity to have some of that one-on-one connections that you normally sort of reserve for that week. You know, you always, well, I'm not going to speak for everyone else, but I always balance a little of fun meetings in with like the legit work meetings just to, you know, keep your sanity throughout the week. But I think it's definitely going to be an interesting week. And I think there's going to be a lot that comes out of it. And, you know, I was kind of joking with some of my colleagues. There was a trend that had started, you know, more for the female side, getting away from the spiked heels and wearing more, you know, practical footwear. So we had started it was glitter Converse, you know, just fun footwear, and it was starting to catch on, and you were starting to see more people tweeting about their footwear. I don't know if that's this year because it doesn't really matter. Slippers are the norm, but maybe there's snazzy JP Morgan backgrounds or things that people can use to start a trend. I don't know, but it should be fun.
No, that sounds great. Probably better than people sharing their Zoom sort of below Zoom level where.
Yeah, just make everybody stand up at one point in the meeting, and that'll.
I'm not going to stand up. Okay, so thank you, Jen. That's great. I mean, actually, is it if people go onto your website, can they see some of this stuff, or
yeah, there's on some of the links are there, and I can pop some things in the chat, and then certainly our member directory is up there as well on our website. So if anyone's interested, like I said, in connecting with, in particular with any of our companies, you know, please let me know, and I'm happy to facilitate an introduction.
Fantastic. You'll be inundated with requests, I'm sure. So we come to the sort of last theme for the panel, and we were thinking, look, this is an opportunity for a reset. When we were doing this discussion this time last year and the year before, you get that mix of, oh God, it's so expensive, you know, and it's such a drain on the brain and the liver, and, you know, is it really worth it? And on the other side, again, well, you've got the serendipitous meetings, but obviously, you know, this whole pandemic is turning everything on its head. So I'll get, if the sort of theme is sort of with the opportunity of a reset, what do we want for 2022 and beyond? If Teresa, you lead this discussion, and Tim come in once she's had her say, and then maybe if we've got a little bit of time, we just throw it out to everybody else as well. So Teresa, what's your view? How do you think this is going to impact JPM 22 and beyond?
So I think I'll really reiterate a lot of what people have already stated here, and that, you know, people are looking forward to the expanded time period of, you know, over the month. And, you know, Alan mentioned, you know, rather than on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, sending out your invites, you know, really doing that work in October and November. And I think that's maybe what we should look forward to, is sort of pulling that back, doing more of these virtual meetings, right, to start establish some of the relationships, maybe sort of operationalize some of the serendipity to come if the meeting is actually live, knock on wood, hopefully it is. I do think people are craving that human connection now and interaction after essentially a full year of this. And so, you know, I think if we could pull it forward into the late fall, some of the early setup meetings, early sort of pre-partnering meetings, getting some of that footwork done, so that when you get there, it isn't, I mean, there was over the past few years somewhat of a craziness about it, right? Just the number of people, and just like, it was sort of like a competition, the sheer number of people in the madness, right? Rather than really focusing in the content. Just more networking for networking's sake versus networking to actually move things forward. And I think this gives an opportunity to sort of pull back to, you know, get rid of some of that craziness, really focus on the meetings that are of importance, but it'll still allow that serendipity of, you know, walking down the street or into a hotel lobby or a coffee shop and seeing someone, you know, an old friend or someone that you want to meet, and having that opportunity. So I think, you know, using what we've learned by going virtual and understanding that you can start relationships and you can build relationships, and maybe doing that in the earlier fall into JP Morgan, and then allowing, you know, to have it seem less sort of crazy and mad, and more, maybe more driving forward some really interesting connections at that point.
Okay, so more focus, more pre-planning, less craziness. I think that's a very good credo to live by. Tim, what's your view?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think a sort of mixed format. Certainly wouldn't want to give up on being there. the serendipity is very important. The social as well. We've heard some talk of there being a drain on the liver. Well, I'm prepared to risk that.
That's very noble.
But also, online partnering, I think it is, as we said earlier, very, very hard work to set up your own meetings and rushing all over the place. So some sort of online format, and I'm certainly encouraged to hear what Jen had to say earlier about the pharma companies perhaps being slightly more organized about this. So yeah, I think all those things will hopefully appear in the 2022 scenario, and hopefully we'll all be there and taking advantage of some of these online functionality.
I mean, just on the online functionality, do you think there is a case for just having one partnering system? Because it's always been a sort of multitude of conferences in that 1 week. Would that
yeah. I mean, I think the difficulty for us is that we actually, I mean, historically we haven't registered for any conference, and so to have some sort of system that enables you to be there and use a system, not having to register for one conference or another. And obviously, over the past few years, there's been JPM itself, there's been the showcase. If you don't want to, you just want to go there for partnering purposes, it would be helpful to have a system that enables you to set up those meetings without having to register formally for a particular meeting, either JPM or the showcase.
Oh, maybe perhaps EBD can sort something out for us.
Yes, we're happy to. And we've actually had a number of those conversations, and we do have several pharma in the system using it that way this year for all of their meetings. So yes, we're happy to facilitate that. I think also just on a couple points that were raised, I do know that a number of the presenting companies are kind of embargoing their news for next week, so I'm looking forward to hearing quite a lot coming from them. And then with what's coming for 2022, I think we've all had a really accelerated learning period this year, and I think there's some really cool things that came out of some of the struggles. So I think adding some of these interesting networking elements, kind of sorting out the hybrid event. We're very much looking forward to going back to physical, but then having a platform where people who aren't able to travel, or maybe who can't afford the expense of being in San Francisco, will still be able to engage, still be able to access all of the content and partnering. And yeah, we're really looking forward to building even something better for 2022. But we're really excited about what has been accomplished this year in this time frame.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. It's amazing how quickly everyone's had to adapt. Mike, any further words?
Well, I think it's worth remembering that, I think it was one of the other panelists highlighted this, is the fact that in recent years people have been complaining about it, whether it's the cost, sort of the amount of time, the travel, etc., that actually already people had elected not to attend the 39th JPM. I remember when it was called H&Q, so actually I predate Alan going to the meeting in San Francisco. I think my first one was in 1994, which is about the third or fourth one that Dennis Purcell was running at the time. But I think that if you look at the sort of the reset, I think that it will be interesting to sort of see if we still see the same sort of same sort of cadence of deals, etc., that take place because of the JPM virtually as opposed to JPM in person. Because I think that what might force that sort of permanent change for a blended environment is if people actually sort of think, you know what, it wasn't that bad. We were actually still able to achieve the goals that we set out without having to sort of deal with the sort of the time, the cost, etc. So I think that that's going to be something that people are going to appraise this year. And depending on how well that does, I think it will be whether people actually sort of think, let's get back to San Francisco. The meeting is definitely going to take place because I think JP Morgan got some deal with the Western for the next 20 years, because when people were asking JP Morgan to actually move it out of San Francisco to somewhere else. It was kind of pointed out that, you know, they've got this long-term deal, so that I've got a feeling that second week in January we're going to turn up like, you know, one of those zombie movies where, you know, it's the second week in January, we're all in San Francisco and we're not really sure why.
I think there's some truth to that, Mike. I must admit, we had a big debate this year whether we were going to go or not, just because of the cost was just so incredible. And, you know, you always end up with a debate of who's going and who's not going, and you end up with more of you going. And if 5 of you go, it's sort of, you know, it's pretty expensive on the airfares, which I guess in the US you don't have such a sensitivity to, because you can get to San Francisco much easier. And so there was a debate in our group about whether we should go or not. In the end, we decided to, and, you know, we've lost out on the airfares, but hey ho. So no, 2022, I think you're right. It may be that, you know, the virtual nature of it means that people don't go and they just pick and choose what they can do on a virtual basis with Zoom and catch up with the people in other places. But having said all that, I do think there's a real need for this industry to come together, and JPM's been lucky enough to have actually been the catalyst to bring everybody together to do that. And, you know, for those of us in Europe and the UK, the Jefferies conference is doing something similar in Europe at the moment, I think, in a similar way. But I do think there's a need to bring everybody together in a physical state as well as a virtual state. It's just JPM was getting too unwieldy and too expensive that you've sort of been asking yourself, you know, is there better ways to do this? So yeah, it will be interesting 2022. And hopefully, you know, people may learn from that. The other question is, you know, there's always talk of moving it from San Francisco, but I don't think that's going to happen, because that's determined on JP Morgan, and JP Morgan ain't going to move it from San Francisco. So everything's going to evolve around that, and Pharma's going to be in San Francisco, so they're going to attract everybody to them. So yeah, I think San Francisco's, that's where it's going to be. I think on a plus side of San Francisco, of course, at this time of year, the weather's usually much nicer, apart from the last couple of years.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I think, yeah, if they can keep the hybrid model, I think that'd
be great,
help a lot. And also, you know, if it's still extended for a month, although that might change.
Yeah.
Jen, go on.
But actually, no, I mean, Mel, on that point though, the fact that it is extended, it means that lots more people participate. It means actually there's not the sort of the time constraint in terms of the presentation. So I believe, in fact, that the presentations that are taking place, instead of being sort of 20, 25-minute slots, they're now 40-minute slots. So, you know, there's, you know, more opportunity to actually, you know, have a real sort of dig underneath the hood of you know, what's going on in these companies.
No, absolutely. It's less rushed, and you haven't got that situation where a company makes a presentation to 3 people and they all dash out of the room, and there's you know, Jen, let's give you the last word, given you're based in California, and you know, you would normally be hosting and seeing a ton of people come through San Francisco. What are your wishes for 22 and beyond?
You know, I think I agree with a lot of what has been said. It'll be interesting to see really in the next 2 years what the deal flow really looks like. You know, we've talked to a lot of our pharma companies and our pharma members, and they have concerns. You know, they look at sort of JP Morgan, Bio, and some of the fall conferences, and, you know, some of the one-off programming that we do as their sort of connection points. And, you know, some of them have said, you know, I'm not worried about the immediate, but I'm worried about 2 years from now. And is our deal flow still operating at the same level? And do we still have the same amount of opportunities coming through? So I think it's just, again, reiterating that, you know, putting yourself out there and using your network to get to people that have those direct connections. You know, there's been a lot of debate in our membership on sort of the newer stage entrepreneurs that aren't as established versus the seasoned entrepreneurs that can pick up the phone and call anyone. And it's you know, how do you balance that? And you could have a great idea, but you're an unknown entity. So how are you getting yourself out there? And I think it's really utilizing your network, especially when, you know, we're in a virtual environment for JP Morgan. And so I think, you know, 2022, I think people will be ready to come back in person. And I think, I guess just, I feel like my mantra today has been put yourself out there and just, you know, use whatever networking, whatever connections, whatever opportunities you can to just get in there and get your company seen.
Yeah, but to Teresa's point, do it earlier rather than at the last minute.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for everyone who's contributed. I will pass over to Alicia. We might have a little bit of time left, but only a little for a few questions. But it's up to you, Alicia.
Thank you very much, Mel, and thank you to all of the panelists. That was a very insightful discussion. I do indeed have a few questions, and we've definitely got time for one. So I'd like to pose it to all of the panel. So when during 2021 would you envisage returning to face-to-face events? And perhaps we can go across the screen as it is on the slide. So Mike, would you like to kick us off there?
I'm not very confident that we're going to have face-to-face meetings, certainly not here in the UK, for certainly the foreseeable future. So, you know, I've got tickets to WOMAD, planning to go to the Edinburgh Festival, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I actually don't think, I think thinking about 2022, that's probably the earliest.
Thank you, Mike. And Jennifer?
Agree. Yeah, I mean, just in terms of Biocom California and what we've been looking at right now, we're essentially looking through Q3 of all events remaining virtually and potentially looking at Q4 as maybe some smaller meetings coming back in person, but I think it's all dependent on what happens over the next couple of months.
Thank you. Tina?
Yeah, so we have an event in China this spring, actually, and they're in Shanghai largely back to normal. So we will be doing a physical event in Shanghai in the spring, so long as things stay as they are there, with a hybrid component for the rest of the US. And we did see a lot of engagement from the rest of the world in that meeting when it was all virtual earlier this year. So we'll see, that'll be a good chance to kind of test out that model. And then in the US and Europe, we're really just evaluating kind of week by week here. I think probably late fall, as Jen.
It's interesting. Yeah, there's some clear geographical differences in terms of obviously the scale of the pandemic. And Tim, your thoughts?
I'd like to be optimistic, and I'd like to think third quarter. So once we have the summer behind us, once the vaccine programs are well advanced, I think I'd like to feel that will be possible.
Indeed, we got to hold on to the optimism that, yes, we do now have the vaccines being rolled out. Very good point. Alan?
Yeah, same again. I think end of Q3 is my money's on, but in a restricted basis, small meetings. I think that's the concern with JPM, is whether we'll actually have a meeting of that scale and size, whether it's actually going to be held, but we'll see.
Thank you. And finally, Teresa?
I think I'm the broken record here. I would say end of Q3 is what I'm thinking in terms of, and I'm optimistic for that. So hopeful.
Good, a good consensus there. Excellent. Perhaps just one last question. So does being virtual, do we think that levels the playing field? So perhaps to some degree in a face-to-face conference, it's about who you know and who you bump into. But does being virtual make it easier for perhaps the smaller companies to network? And I don't know if we have time for all the panel to comment. I don't know what, maybe I'll go for the biotech perspective. Tim, would you like to comment on that?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I think, of course, you still need someone to accept your request to have a Zoom call. But yeah, to some extent, it may well do, actually. You certainly, you know, being well connected helps you with those serendipitous meetings we were talking about earlier in the lobby of the Hilton or around Union Square. But and you know, certainly the smaller biotechs are a bit of a disadvantage there. But yeah, I can see an element of that.
Yeah, just coming back on that, one of the things that we find is, of course, we're investing, and it's hard to do those face-to-face meetings. And so you really, one of the things that's a big advantage to companies, if you do know somebody in the company, to have that conversation, because you're doing that investment. Basically, we're saying now we're going to do investments completely virtually, where is you'd really want to meet people and you want to sit down at a table, you want to go for dinner with them, you want to get to know them. And that's going to be that's really hard at the minute, that we can't do that. You know, we're sort of meeting companies in parks and stuff like that, where we were, and that's now stopped. So I think there is some advantages to it, but it's still hard. You know, to give people money, you need to know them, and you need to know them well. And this over Zoom, we've accepted we need to do it. It's just getting used to it and getting your head around it and figuring out how you do diligence in that way to give you the confidence to go off ahead with it. So
also from Alan, from your perspective, I guess you want to go and visit the companies. You want to go to their offices and have a look around.
Well, exactly. You look a bit, you know, you turn up at your investment committee, and if you go, have you met these people? No. Have you ever been to their office? No.
I mean,
you know, it's quite interesting.
So that actually kind of highlights one of the challenges for sort of sustainable development of the industry, for those individuals who already have the networks that they know you, Alan, or they know somebody who knows you.
Yeah.
Then those connections can be made. I think that sort of the challenge, it's a bit like, you know, so the kids not being able to go to school now is actually we're going to feel the effects in 5 years, 10 years time. And I think that, you know, the young companies who don't have quite the sort of same you know, interactions or networks, they're the ones that are going to be challenged, because in 2 or 3 years time, when they actually do need the big amounts of money, they won't have actually built up that kind of that network that you could do through those initial accidental collisions.
Yeah.
On a JPM, you know, on a San Francisco street during JPM.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a very interesting point, actually. That, you know, potentially there's a problem with storing up here, or being stored up.
To some extent, I'm a bit, you know, Mike, I'm a bit more open-minded, because when I was a CEO, I was a bit fresh-faced and a bit very naive, and so I'm a bit more lenient on that stuff. And also, the science drives a lot of the investments. So if the science is good and the quality is good and the work's good, then it does give you a lot of confidence. But I think you raise a good point that inevitably, if you know somebody, it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, but of course, Alan, if you weren't an optimist, you wouldn't be a venture capitalist.
No,
so.
Exactly. You wouldn't be in venture. Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much to all. So we're up to time now. So it just leaves to me to once again thank our chair, Melanie, and all our panelists, Mike, Jennifer, Tina, Tim, Alan, and Teresa, for your time and sharing your experiences, insights, and to some extent forecasts for what's coming up. And then just to highlight, the session has been recorded and will be distributed to attendees, and we're also using it to grow the on-demand content that we are making available for our members. And as well as the recording, I will work on some key takeaways from the session and distribute those. And finally, this session will, or the plan is to lead into another, for those who may have already attended, our My Question is Networking sessions. We've done a couple last year, so we're going to carry on the discussion, and the plan is to do one of those towards the end of this month. So please keep a lookout on the One Nucleus website for when that goes up. And with that, I'd just like to wish you all a very good rest of your day and say thank you for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.